Are you sure the net salary that you receive at the end of the month is the correct take-home pay after the KRA deductions? In this video, I'll show you how to use the KRA Tax Calculator to calculate and confirm your PAYE and other deductions and expected take-home pay. So before we use the KRA Tax Calculator, let's first understand some of the terms that you come across when you're dealing with your salary or deductions. So first, we have basic pay, or the basic salary. So this is the fixed amount of salary that you earn for your job, before adding any additional earnings such as allowances, house allowance, bonuses, or commissions. And then next we have gross pay, or the gross salary. This is the total earnings that you receive before any deductions are made, and it includes your basic salary plus any additional earnings such as transport allowances, you have house allowances, bonuses, commissions, or any other taxable earnings that you get on top of your basic salary. Now this becomes the gross salary, and this is the taxable amount. For example, if your basic salary is 50,000 and you receive a bonus of 10,000, then your gross pay for that month becomes 60,000 before any deductions are made. And then we have deductions. These are the amounts that are taken from your salary before you receive your final pay. Some deductions are statutory, meaning they are mandatory and they are required by law, while others may depend on your circumstances or your employment arrangements. Then finally, we have net salary, or the net pay, also known as take-home pay. This is the amount that remains after the applicable deductions that we will share next have been deducted or taken from your salary. And this is the amount that is actually paid to you. So after KRA wametoa kila kitu, your employer ametoa kila kitu, from the 60,000, there are those deductions that I'll share next, and then after those deductions, chenye imebaki, that is what that comes to your bank. That is what we call net pay. Now that we understand the gross salary, deductions, and net salary, let's look at some of the deductions and contributions that may affect your take-home pay. First is PAYE, which stands for pay as you earn. This is an income tax deduction from your employment income. It is deducted by your employer and it is paid to KRA on your behalf. So the amount of PAYE you pay, it depends on your taxable income, that is your salary, the basic salary, the KRA approved tax rates, and any reliefs that you may qualify for. The next is NSSF, which stands for the National Social Security Fund. This is a statutory contribution or mandatory contribution towards your social security, and the amount contributed depends on the applicable NSSF rates and earnings. We also have Social Health Insurance Fund, which is commonly referred to SHIF. This is a statutory health insurance or a mandatory health insurance contribution that is deducted from your employment income at the applicable rate also. Another deduction you may also see is the new affordable housing levy. This is also a statutory contribution towards the affordable housing program, and it is deducted at the applicable rate also. So all those have a rate that is set by the government or by KRA that every employee has to be deducted. You may also have other deductions or adjustments depending on your circumstances, such as pension contributions, mortgage interest, and other allowable deductions. So when you look at your payslip, don't just look at the gross salary and the final amount you pay, the final amount that was paid to you, sorry. It is most important to understand what each deduction represents and how it affects your salary. With that in mind, let's now go to the KRA Tax Calculator and see how you can calculate your pay, deductions, and the expected take-home. So you'll go to Google and search for KRA Tax Calculator, And then you select the first result that appears, which is PAYE Calculator, and then click to open it. Then once it opens, you'll be able to see here on your left side different calculators available. That is including PAYE Calculator, we have NSSF Calculator, we have the SHIF or the former NHIF calculator, and then we have the housing levy calculator. So all these calculators will be able to help you calculate how much you'll pay. If you want to calculate individually for any of those options or those deductions, then you'll be able to calculate from this point. So let's now look at the overall KRA tax calculator. You'll click on tax calculators here, and then you'll be able to see the PAYE calculator. You can also see the current KRA paid tax bads that are applicable in this section, but our main focus is PAYE calculator section. So let's do a simple demonstration so that you can see how the calculation is done. Let's assume that this employee earned 50,000 shillings. Under the month that you want to calculate, you can let's assume that we are calculating July 2026, so we select July. Now, if the employee's basic pay has no additional benefits or earnings, then we select basic pay and enter 50,000. So next, if the employee makes additional pension contributions, then you can enter the total amount here. Let's assume in this case it's 2,400 for that month. And then if you also have a mortgage interest, so assuming the mortgage interest for that month is 3,000 shillings, we include it here. Next, under select NSSF rate, we have or you see three options. The first is under the new NSSF rates. In the new NSSF rates, we have two options. Then that is Tier 1, which applies to earnings that are from 0 up to 8,000. Then the second option in the new NSSF rate, we have both Tier 1 and Tier 2, which applies to earnings that are above 8,000. And then the third option is the old NSSF rate, which applies where the employer is still contributing under the old fixed rate of 200 shillings. So for our example, the employee is under the new NSSF rate. That's our assumption. So since the basic salary is above 8,000, which is 50,000, then we will select both Tier 1 and 2 option. Under other deductions, you'll see SHIF and housing levy. So tick the applicable options in these deductions if they are being deducted by your employer. So if both of them are being deducted, you tick at them and then finally click on calculate. Now finally, you'll see that the PAYE calculation is complete and the calculator has given you a summary of your calculation. Now we started with basic salary of 50,000. The calculator has then calculated the NSSF, SHIF, and housing levy deductions, which in this example is 5,125. Now remember, these are allowable deductions, meaning they are taken into account when determining the amount of income that is subject to PAYE. Then we arrive at the taxable pay, which is the amount that is subject to income tax. So in our example, the taxable pay is calculated by taking the 50,000 shillings, then less the total allowable deductions of 5,125, and then you less the pension contribution of 2,400 and less the mortgage interest of 3,000. So that gives you a taxable pay, or the amount that is subject to tax, of 39,475. So hii ndio amount yenye itataxiwa. Now PAYE, or the income tax, is then calculated on this amount using the applicable tax bad rate that you can see here. Now once the income tax has been calculated, the employee gets a personal relief of 2,400 per month. So this is usually deducted from your tax or the PAYE for every employee or every individual taxpayer. Whether you're an employee, whether you are in business, as long as you're not a company, you get the personal relief of 2,400 every year. Sawa sawa. So this leaves us with a PAYE to be deducted from the salary. which in our example we have 4,225 since we have been allowed or deducted 2,400. It's like tumesamehewa hiyo amount. So finally, we have pay after tax, also known as the net salary or your take home, the one we said before. I hope you can remember. So this is the taxable pay of 39,475, and then you deduct PAYE or the tax of 4,225. Now this gives us a take home pay of 35,250. So that's the amount that lands into your bank account. Now let's assume that this employee does not have any mortgage interest or additional pension contributions. So we simply leave those two blank, and most of the employees don't have those two. So we shall leave them blank and then calculate again. Now in this case, using the same process, you can see that the employees pay after tax or the take home is 39,029. So this amount is a bit higher because they don't have deductions from the mortgage interest and the pension. They are not being deducted that amount. So they get home 39,029. And this is why it is very important to understand whether the salary that you're being offered is your gross pay or the net pay. Because, for example, someone may be expecting 50,000, but this is gross pay, and they'll not take home 50,000 after the applicable deductions of the payee, and their take-home pay, of course, will go down more than they expected before. So it's very good to be clear on that point. Now you have maybe heard about the fact that if you earn 24,000 shillings per month and below, and then you don't pay any tax. So let's use the calculator to understand exactly what this means. So let's enter the basic pay. Let's assume it's the maximum of 24,000. So remember, SHIF and housing levy, they are mandatory deductions. So these ones will still be calculated and they'll be deducted from the employees or your salary. So in this example, the total for the three statutory deductions will be 2,460. If you deduct that from 24,000, you get a taxable pay of 21,540. The payee or income tax calculated from that amount will be 2,154, which is basically 10% of 21,540 according to the applicable tax rates. Now, the employee gets a personal relief, which I said unasamehewa some tax of 2,400 per month. If you deduct that from 2,154, you get a negative amount because 2,400 is higher. So this means there is no payee to pay. Now, this is where the statement that someone earning below 24,000, they do not pay payee. This is where it comes from because payee will always be zero if the salary is 24,000 and below. However, remember that the zero payee does not mean zero deductions. That's a different. There's a difference between payee and other deductions. So yes, payee is zero, but the SHIF and the housing levy, they are still deducted if you get to the level at which they apply. So they will be deducted from your salary. So therefore, in this example, the employees take home pay of the net salary, they will therefore be 21,540, not 24,000. Now let's briefly look at the other calculators available on KRA. So if you click on the NSSF calculator, this is useful when you only want to calculate the NSSF contributions separately. So using the NSSF rates that you can see here, we have the one that is effective February 2026. So if you use these rates from the first tier, the earnings or the first group, tier is like a group, the earnings up to 9,000 shillings, they are subject to 6% contributions, that is from you, the employee. So if your income is 9,000 and more, And in our case, we use the previous example of 50,000. So that is above 9,000. So the contribution in this group or this tier, it will be maximum of 540, which is simply 6% of 9,000. You get 540. Now for any income that is above 9,000, you calculate another 6% of that balance. So this will particularly help someone who is dealing with these deductions if they want to know how they can be doing it for the employees. So using the earlier example of 50,000, we take 50,000 less 9,000, which gives us a balance of 41,000, sorry. So this is the amount that is above 9,000. So 6% of 41,000 gives us 2,460. That is the Group 2 or the Tier 2 NSSF. Now to get the total NSSF contributions, we add the Group 1 or the Tier 1, 540, to the Group 2 or the Tier 2 contribution of 2,460. Now from this total NSSF contribution, we get 3,000. So this employee will pay 3,000 shillings as NSSF for that month. So as you can see, this is the same amount of NSSF amount that we got earlier when we were used to calculate the PAYE calculator. When you use the PAYE calculator, remember we got 3,000. So if you only want to know your NSSF contributions, then you can use the NSSF calculator directly. Now next, we have the SHIF calculator. So first, you can select the month that you want to calculate for. And then let's assume it's July like previously. And then enter your gross pay. For example, let's enter 50,000. Then click on calculate. You can also see that there are applicable SHIF rates here. For your gross pay of up to 5,999, the monthly contribution is a fixed amount of 300. Now for gross pay that is above 6,000, the contribution is calculated at 2.75% of the gross pay. So in our example, we have to calculate 2.75% of 50,000, and this gives us a SHIF payment of 1,375. So as you can see, this is the same SHIF contribution that we got earlier when we used the PAYE calculator. Then finally, we have the housing levy calculator. So follow the same process. Select the month that you want to use, then enter your gross pay, then calculate. So using our example of 50,000, the employee contribution is calculated at 1.5% gross pay. You can see the rate here. So 1.5% of 50,000 will give us 750,000. That is assuming we are using the same example of 50,000 shillings. So this is the same housing levy contribution that we got earlier, if you can recall, when you used the PAYE calculator. So there's something that I need you to take note, that NSSF and housing levy contributions, the calculator includes both the employee's contribution and the employer's contribution, as you can see here. So this helps you understand how much is being contributed by you as the employee, and that is the main agenda that we are doing today. But it also helps you to know how much the employer is contributing for you or on your behalf also. So if it's housing NSSF, there's an amount that you do, there's an amount that the employer does, but it goes to your account. The same with housing levy. Also, keep in mind that these calculations, they are just estimates as provided by the KRA Tax Calculation or the calculator. So the actual amounts on your payslip may differ by a few shillings depending on the information that is used, but they should not differ significantly, just differ with a few shillings. But otherwise, this calculator should give you the right estimate to expect from your salary. So whether you are an employee who wants to understand and confirm the deductions on your salary, or you're an employer that wants to correctly calculate your PAYE and prepare the P9 forms for your employees, the KRA Tax Calculator can be a very helpful tool. So if you found this video helpful, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more practical tax and accounting tutorials. You can also leave your comments or questions below and I'll get back to you. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.